So there's breaking news. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass has removed the fire chief. Also, Governor of Maine clashes with President Trump during the meeting at the White House. And the governor of New York is also losing it over President Trump. We're going to get to all of this in this video. But let's start with the details about this firing.
So breaking moments ago, embattled Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass says that she has removed the fire chief, Kristen Crowley. The move coming after the mayor claimed this week that she, quote, wasn't aware of severe fire warnings before leaving the city of Los Angeles, where she's the mayor, to go to Ghana for 4 days. National correspondent Bill Malugin tracking all this for us from Los Angeles. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Martha, this all just came down a short time ago. There had been a whole lot of public tension between Mayor Bass and Chief Crowley after the Palisades fire first broke out. It has all now apparently come to this climax. As you mentioned, Mayor Bass just announcing a short time ago, she is firing Chief Crowley effective immediately. We're standing by for a press conference supposed to happen any minute now, but she did put out a statement which says in part, quote, "We know that 1,000 firefighters that could have been on duty the morning the fires broke out were instead sent home on Chief Crowley's watch."
Now, I just want to add on to what he was saying, because I think this sentence actually is what should get a lot of backlash. Acting in the best interest of Los Angeles public safety and for the operations of the Los Angeles Fire Department, I removed Kristen Crowley as fire chief. So acting in the best interest of Los Angeles. Were you acting in the best interest of Los Angeles when you took your trip to Ghana at the behest of then President Biden, knowing that you were warned about the deadly fires that could occur?
Now, Chief Crowley had previously said that Mayor Bass's slashing of millions of dollars from the fire department budget would reduce the department's effectiveness and ability to respond to wildfires. Mayor Bass, on her end, in recent days had been blaming Chief Crowley for not warning her, about the fire risk before she left for her trip to Africa. Now, Bass was in Ghana at a cocktail party when the Palisades fire first broke out. She decided to leave for that trip despite repeated dire warnings from the National Weather Service about a major windstorm event approaching, creating extreme risk for wildfires. In the meantime, developer Rick Caruso, who ran against Mayor Bass in the mayoral race in 2022, is now reacting to Chief Crowley's firing. He writes on X in part, quote, "It is very disappointing that Mayor Bass has decided to fire Chief Kristen Crowley. The mayor's decision to ignore the warnings and leave the city was hers alone."
Now, she did hold a press conference looking to explain her decision to let go of that fire chief and also introduce the new one. Now, she did run into a problem because there were members of the press, and I will give them credit, for hitting her with some hard questions, because she's claiming that the fire chief did not contact her and that she didn't have all the facts when she praised her originally, and that there was a certain time that they did speak. And then later in her press conference, she acknowledged, oh, wait, we did speak the morning of the fires. So I want to take a look at a few of these exchanges. Watch this.
Well, I've got a question for you. You said that removing Chief Crowley is in the best interest of Los Angeles public safety. What specifically did she do to endanger public safety?
Well, as I mentioned, 1,000 firefighters who could have been on the job fighting the fires were sent home. The other thing that I mentioned is that I said after the fires were out, after the rain had stopped, that a full investigation would begin. One step of that investigation was to do an after-action report, of which she refused.
So we knew the 1,000 firefighters could have been called in the day after the fire. What changed?
What changed?
Because you said you weren't planning on firing her on January 11th.
Oh, well, let me just be clear. As I just said, while Los Angeles was on fire, after that we had rains. I was not going to do anything while we were in a state of emergency. Next.
Are we still in a state of emergency?
No, we are not in a state of emergency right now.
So really, the only reason why she is firing her, according to her publicly, is because she refused to do an after-action review, which is really what we used to do in the military after a major training exercise or even a mission. You're going to sit down and you're going to figure out what went right, what went wrong, and what can we do differently next time. Now, later in this press conference, which I'm not really going to show you guys because it kind of drags on, she acknowledged that she was told to do the after-action review just this week. And because she heard the fire chief refuse to do it, she called her in and let her go, and that meeting was brief. Now, here's the media asking her about what proof do you really have that this time around the chief didn't contact you and didn't warn you of these fires that were going to happen? Here's what she said.
What I can tell you is that what has happened in the 2+ years I've been here, every time there was a weather emergency or even a hint of a weather emergency, the chief has called me directly. She has my cell phone. She knows she can call me 24/7. And she briefed me, and then we would talk about what needed to happen next. That did not happen this time.
Did you
Yes.
see the forecast before you went to Ghana?
No.
No, you didn't?
Yes.
When did you first speak to her on the 7th or 8th? When did you connect?
I spoke to her the evening of the 7th.
Evening of the 7th?
Yes,
Ghana time or-
exactly, which was the morning here. So it was after the fires started. But let me just be clear. Los Angeles needs to move forward. This is a new day.
Back up a little bit, because I think you actually spoke with the chief, because I heard it live on KNX News at 12:47 p.m. local time. You're in West Africa, the chief is here, and you're on KNX News talking about the fire
Yes.
disaster, and you're praising Chief Crowley for repositioning units that were necessary in vulnerable places. You're also praising her leadership, and you said something to the fact that LAFD is always ever ready.
And needless to say, I did not know all the facts, but I had spoken to her maybe a couple of hours before that.
I said it in my last video in regards to this mayor. She needs to stop doing these press conferences. She needs to have someone else speak for her, because she will contradict herself within 20 seconds. And it's just something that's becoming a pattern. And quite frankly, I don't believe that people who live in that area really care to hear what the mayor has to say at this point. It's about results. What are you going to do to make sure this never happens again? And how can we make sure that people are held accountable? And really what we respected the most is when President Trump called her out to her face when he came here physically. And that's the type of pressure that I hope continues to be applied to her and every leader from the top down in regards to this disaster. Now, speaking of accountability and calling people out to their face, President Trump today called out the governor of Maine because she refuses to acknowledge his executive order banning men from playing in women's sports. Let's take a look at that.
The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine? Well, are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with the state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it, because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply, because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor, because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
Okay, well, number one, probably the biggest exchange here is about her political career. And I'm actually in agreement with President Trump here, because politicians who defy common sense, sooner or later, it doesn't work out for them very well. I think we just went through that in this election, of course, all right? So that's number one. Number two, she can ignore reality all she wants. It doesn't really matter in the end, because she'll lose. President Trump signed an executive order. There's no question about that. Title IX does not support men playing in women's sports. And also, the American people overwhelmingly rejected this. Again, you're seeing Democrats double down on issues that are not going to get them the results that they want. They want to be back in power. They got to let this go. But obviously, they won't. Again, I'm not complaining about it. But why don't we hear a few more details about this exchange?
Quite the scene there at the White House with the governor not backing down, saying, I will see you in court. If people couldn't hear, the president was also saying, are you going to comply with the law? And she said, I'm complying with the state and federal law. And Maine's stance right now is that federal law and state law bars discrimination of people, and that includes transgender Americans. And they see that executive order by President Trump barring transgender athletes from competing in sports as being violating people's civil rights. So that's where things stand. Definitely a showdown that's going to happen in the court, but also, as you saw, in the White House as well, Ali.
Think about how ridiculous their argument is. Okay, so President Trump is discriminating against trans athletes. Okay, let's go back to science. How can he discriminate against men playing in women's sports? It's against the law. Okay, there's a reason why you have men's sports and women's sports. And it's interesting how you don't hear it happening the other way, right? When's the last time you heard a trans athlete that was a woman wanted to be a man and competed against men? You don't hear that. Why? Because they're not going to be successful. Okay. I mean, this really defies common sense and logic. Now, the timing is so fitting because libs of TikTok just put this up. This is literally 4 days ago. A boy pretending to be a girl who just won first place in the girls' Maine State Class B championship. Before he pretended to be a girl, he was 5th place on the boys' team. He's a cheater trying to invade women's spaces to get ahead. And here's a photo of that individual here on the left. There he is, coming in 5th place. And then on the right, against women, coming in 1st. So I think that kind of explains everything, right?
You can't allow boys to play women's sports or you're going to lose your federal funding. Does that hold up, do you think?
I think ultimately it will. You know, the Supreme Court has declined thus far to take up the issue of biological men in women's sports, but we are waiting for a decision from the Supreme Court on whether states can prohibit funding and the procedures, gender treatment for minors. I do think when they issue that decision, it's going to set the tone and it's certainly going to signal where they'll land on these other ones. But look, I think it's just, just as a matter of pragmatism, it's foolish for the governor of Maine and representing the state to defy the White House in this way. The White House has a lot of power and they have money and grants and funding to give. And so they're fully within their rights to say, look, you're not going to play ball, then you know what, we're not going to give you the money.
Yep, because ultimately Congress is the one who appropriates the money. And the executive branch can obviously divert the money if they want, but the money has to be spent one way or another, and they could choose whether they're going to send the money to that particular state or not. It's really that simple. So this is a lot of, obviously, politics that's not going to end well for the governor. Now, that's not the only governor that's clashing with President Trump. Now we're talking about Governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. Okay, this is our next story here. She's bashing Trump because he wants to end price congestion. She also did not remove Mayor Eric Adams for reasons that I'm still trying to make sense of, so you're not going to want to miss what she had to say about that. But all in all, she's going to lose that battle too. Now, let's first hear what she had to say about President Trump.
At 1:01 p.m. today, the U.S. Department of Transportation emailed us a letter from Secretary Duffy announcing their attempt to end the congestion pricing program in the state of New York. At 1:58 p.m., President Donald Trump tweeted, "Long live the king." I'm here to say New York hasn't labored under a king in over 250 years. You sure as hell are not going to start now. I don't care if you love congestion pricing or hate it. This is an attack on our sovereign identity, our independence from Washington. We are not subservient to a king or anyone else out of Washington. So this is the fight we're in. We're fighting for our residents, our commuters, our riders, our drivers, our emergency personnel. Life has gotten better. Even those who have asthma, people with illness. That's who we're fighting for.
Well, his full statement, for the record, was this: congestion pricing is dead. Manhattan and all of New York is saved. Long live the king. Now, if anybody has a certain level of common sense and you're in control of your emotions, you'd read that, you'd probably chuckle because you know what President Trump is really good at, and that is making liberals scream, okay? They hang on every single word, and as a result, that's why they're always frazzled, okay? Now, before we get to her announcement about Mayor Eric Adams and how she's not going to remove him, my only advice to her is why don't you focus on the crime that has clearly skyrocketed in the last 4 years, because you fell in line with what Joe Biden wanted to do. You allowed a mass invasion to come into your state. We know New York City is a sanctuary city. You are the person who's actually done damage. You are the person who have allowed New Yorkers to get burned on the subway for people to be afraid to do anything about it. You also are the individual who has allowed your prosecutors to go after a Marine for defending New Yorkers. So again, she has zero credibility here. Now, let's listen to her message this morning where she continues to attack President Trump.
The Trump administration has said is already trying to use the legal jeopardy facing our mayor as leverage to squeeze and punish our city. The president's already trying to weaken our public transit system and undermine our state sovereignty. I call it the Trump revenge tour, and I have to stand in its way. Not surprising, he's taking out his anger and frustration over the 35 felony convictions he received here in the state of New York, taken out on our own New Yorkers. And as governor, I will be the vanguard against harm to our state and our people, and nothing will stand in our way. But once I have made a decision, I execute it, work hard to make it work.
All right. Well, number one, she sounds like she's reading a Joe Biden speech. Okay. I don't know if you guys caught on to that, but I'm telling you, it sounds eerie similar. That's the first thing. Secondly, let's just be honest here. If she truly believes that the Trump administration has a chokehold on Mayor Eric Adams, then why don't you just remove him? Why don't you just do that? Because if you do that, then the Trump administration won't be able to control him, according to her logic. So this begs the question, why did she not remove Mayor Eric Adams if she truly believes Trump will be able to control him? Well, you're going to be shocked by the answer, because according to CNN, it's for 3 reasons. 1, because she believes the voters should decide. That's a smart answer. 2, because he's black. And 3, because she's the first female governor. Yeah, let's try to make that make sense.
So what is the governor saying?
Well, Wolf, 2 primary things, and she said that ultimately it's up to New Yorkers to decide whether or not the mayor should get to keep his job, and that they get to do that by elections. She also made this decision after having several high-profile meetings with the city's top Democrats, specifically some of the city's black elected leaders. And according to sources that are familiar with those meetings, they told me that something that was weighing very heavily on the governor was that the fact that she was going to do something that would set significant precedent if she removed him. And she was aware of the optics, right? She's the first woman governor of the state of New York. Eric Adams is the second black mayor of the city of New York. And that weighed heavily on her. This is someone who is going to be up for re-election in a year. And so all of that was part of her decision. But she is moving ahead to put some guidelines in place that are going to limit the mayor's independence.
So clearly she's not thinking in terms of what's right or wrong. She's thinking in terms of optics, race, and gender. Yeah, that sounds like something that's really been destroying the Democrats for some time now, and why they lost the election. But hey, to each its own, right? And for her to say that she's fighting for New Yorkers, clearly she's not. She's fighting for optics. And that's why this story is another bombshell loss for the Democratic Party, because now Fox News earlier this morning exposed Democrats who are serving in Congress where their state has received billions of dollars of taxpayer money to fund their pet projects. Listen to this.
In politics, money is power. If you're getting money for your state, you're making your constituents in your state happy. That's who's voting for you. That's how you keep your job. So when somebody comes along, and Elon Musk famously on stage yesterday with the chainsaw, the point is he's there to make big changes. But the folks who count on the cash flowing year after year hate it. Now, they're going to have good reasons why they like all these spending programs. No doubt they're out there saying it. But the point is they don't want that system to change because that system works for them.
I understand that they're going to get pressure from the stakeholders in their state. But when I'm talking with people, average day folks in the country of all political persuasions, they like the cutting because they're wondering why they aren't receiving some of these funds.
There's an intuition, and it's right. This money isn't their money, and it's not the government's money. It's taxpayer money, right? Every improper payment, every check that goes to somebody who doesn't deserve it, every check that puts somebody on dependency for the government, taxpayers know that's their money, and they don't want to do that. They want somebody looking out for this, somebody who cares about what we call the improper stuff. That's Doge.
And so it's just like Elon Musk said, the people who are screaming the loudest and obviously panicking are the ones who are behind the fraud. And let's not be naive here. We know people who serve in Congress are allowed to have access to information that will make them wealthy. That's why they go in there. They only make maybe $100,000 to $200,000 a year, but they're worth millions. Am I upset that they're worth billions? No. Get your money. I love it. But when you're doing it at the detriment of taxpayers, that's when I absolutely have a problem. Now, here's what the White House press secretary also had to say.
But I wanted to ask you, what is the president's message to those that opposed cutting government wasteful spending? Why would anyone be opposed to that thought?
Well, it's a very good question. I think the people that are opposing cutting waste, fraud, and abuse from the federal government are not only incredibly out of touch with the American people, but they're only in opposition to this idea now because it's President Trump who is delivering on it. If you roll the tape of Democrats for decades, they have been promising this exact same thing. And now President Trump is actually doing it. And DOJ has identified billions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse across our entire federal bureaucracy here in Washington, D.C. And we have political appointees who are onboarding at every agency to work with the secretaries that President Trump has nominated and have been confirmed to identify wasteful spending. And you will continue to see President Trump's cabinet announcing these findings alongside DOJ. And of course, Elon Musk is overseeing this effort and working at the direction of the president. This is another promise made and promise kept.
All right. So what's your reaction to the governor of Maine clashing with President Trump and threatening him that she will see him in court and she's going to fight this in regards to allowing boys to play in women's sports? I showed you an example of that. I'm not making it up. But I really want to know what your point of view on this issue is. Just put that in the comment section below. Now, yesterday, Mitch McConnell announced his retirement just moments before Kash Patel was confirmed as the next FBI director. Now, I really hope that the mayor of Los Angeles would also announce her retirement, but I know we won't get that as well. But anyways, if you guys missed out on that story and more from yesterday, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.